Hey there, folks. Parker Thune, Brandon Drum here with another installment of the post-practice Blitz here on the OU Insider YouTube channel. We spoke earlier today with head coach Brent Venables, whose answers were much more abbreviated than usual.
Mhm.
And it's not that shocking if you're mindful of how Venables has historically treated this game and this week as Oklahoma's head football coach. For instance, last year, Brandon, we only got four player availabilities leading into the Texas game. All
Yep.
four with seniors. We got four seniors. Those were Oklahoma's that consisted the entirety of Oklahoma's pre-game, or I should say week of media conferences. So that's that. And of course, Oklahoma
Essentially what you got this year too, by the way.
I think we got six. We got six this year, and they weren't all freshmen. They were all upperclassmen. We got
Yes.
six of them this year. And I know nobody in the program wants to say or make it sound like they treat this game any differently, Brandon, but they do. I feel like we all understand that they do. There is more at stake. There is more at play in this game than there is for any other opponents on the
Yeah.
calendar, any other game on the calendar. I thought it was real cool that we got to talk to two guys last night that were committed to Texas at one point, Kobe McKenzie and Billy Bowman.
hmm Well, and not only that, you got Jake Sexton that was down to OU in Texas, and he grew up a Texas fan because his dad was a diehard Texas fan from Pampa, Texas. So like there was some interesting I was interested to see if they were going to throw Casey Thompson out there. I was interested to see if Brendan
Oh man.
Thompson, that would have been the best. That would have been epic. But I'm sure, obviously, they didn't. For the questions would have been way too in depth, and the answers would have had to have been controversial just for
One
this week.
thing One thing that Brent Venables was not asked about this morning at his press conference was Jacobe Johnson, which was
Yeah, it
very
pissed me
interesting.
off.
You go, I mean, you could have raised your hand, Brandon.
I did. So
You
listen to
did?
this. No, listen. I raised my hand. I start typing a quote down, and I guess Bob P asked a question about Deshaun McCullough. And I thought it was Jacoby Johnson he was talking about till the very end of, because he never brought Deshaun's name up until the very end of his answer, and he kept talking about length and he's gonna need to play and stuff like that. And it was very vague what position he was talking about. He just talked about a lengthy athletic player, and then he goes, and he's gonna have to play because Kendall Dolby's out. And I was like, and right before that happened, I'd raised my hand to Mike and went, because I thought it was Jacoby Johnson. So I was like, I'm not going to ask another Jacoby Johnson. And then by the time it got back around and I was going to go right after Curtis, I was supposed to go before like five people before that, and time ran out. So no Jacoby Johnson questions, but that's on me for zoning out to type a quote in from a previous answer. So
Anyway, that aside, what everybody's wondering heading into this weekend is, do you see Jacoby Johnson at wide receiver? And
yes,
I feel like we can safely conclude, based on some of Venable's comments last night on his coach's show, that the answer is yes.
yes, yeah, 100%. You have to. They need JJ Hester. They need Jacoby Johnson. They have to play big in this game. They have to be very, very. They just have to produce, man. They have to produce. Jacoby Johnson's going to have to find the 2022 version of himself during fall, and he's going to have to play at that level like he's back at Mustang High School for Oklahoma to be successful. Petaway, another interesting OU Texas kind of receiver player right there. So there's some cool storylines here, and I think Jacoby Johnson is right at the top as far as what he's going to do and what he has to do for OU to be successful. I guess my question to you is 3 weeks in, do you think that he and Michael Hawkins have gotten on the same page to the point where he feels comfortable making a throw in a critical moment of the game to Jacoby Johnson?
I'll tell you this, and we speak quite often of chemistry between quarterbacks and wide receivers because it matters.
It
And
matters.
yeah, whether it's acknowledged or not, there are going to be guys that a quarterback has more of a tendency to look to. But one of the things that's been drilled into Mike since he was very young is don't get locked in on one single receiver. Don't take chemistry to the extreme that you're trying to force a look to one
Mm-hmm.
particular receiver. And so that's not part of his thought process. That's not something that he's going to struggle with, not something that ever really has struggled with. And so you'd expect that by no means is he going to feel the need to get one guy going or look one guy's way on Saturday. And that should be to OU's advantage. But when it gets to, like, let's say, for instance, when it comes down to it, and you need to drive to go win you the football game, who was Dylan Gabriel looking at last year in the Cotton Bowl? First guy
Drake
he was
Stoops.
looking for? What's that now?
Drake Stoops.
First guy he was looking for was the guy that he said would be in his wedding one day, Drake Stoops, because they had that level of trust with each other. Gabriel could trust that Stoops was going to get open, and Stoops could trust that if he got free, if he got clear, if he got to the point where he was running free, Gabriel was going to be able to get him the ball. And who's going to be that guy for Mike Hawkins on Saturday that over the course of the football game can establish repeatedly that they're capable of beating their man? Because if you get in a late game scenario, and ultimately if Oklahoma wins this football game, that's kind of what it's going to come down to, Brandon. I don't see any scenario where Oklahoma just runs away from Texas on
Mm.
Saturday. It's difficult to fathom that. But if you get down in a late game scenario where you need a drive, you need a play, you need a first down, you need a score, I think that's where it's going to come into play mentally for Michael Hawkins. Okay, who can I trust in this moment? Who can I trust to be there? And that may as well be Jacobe Johnson as it may be a guy like Jaquez Petaway or JJ Hester or shoot, maybe this is the Zion Kearney coming out party. But
Mm.
regardless if it's Jacoby or one of the others, I want to see that happen for some receiver on this roster over the course of the game on Saturday. I feel like it needs to
Mm.
happen.
I agree. There's a part of me that thinks it's going to be JJ Hester that he looks to just because of what happened at Auburn.
Sure.
Um, he's there has to be confidence between those two together now, right? And you could see the confidence brimming from Hester, even after the game and post, the post game pressers and scrums that we did. He was different. He was different than he was in fall when people were talking him up as he was going to be a guy that was going to make plays. He's now done it. He caught the ball, and I think that was the first step, was just catching the ball. And I know that sounds really stupid to say about a wide receiver, but that was a mental block for Hester a little bit, and I bet he would admit to that. I wholeheartedly know he would admit to that. So making a big play in a big moment in a big game, having that roll over into Texas is big. And you brought up the Kearney thing. I think it's interesting. Like Petaway kind of had his coming out party against Tennessee, Hester against Auburn. But Texas is notorious for having freshmen show up big for Oklahoma. And I'm trying to think last year who was it that came up? It was Peyton Bowen. It was
Peyton
just coming
Bowen.
out party to
That's right.
everybody last year. So I and obviously Nick Anderson, but um it feels like this is that time where a Kearney or even a Jacobe Johnson, who might as well be a freshman again because he's playing a different position,
Yeah.
shows up and shows out, and the world kind of gets, hello, this is going to be the next dude at OU type of deal. So I'm interested to see who that guy is. I think the other question for me is everybody talks about how this could be a one score game either way, blah, blah, blah. And I think we both agree that Oklahoma isn't going to blow Texas out. Just not going to happen. On the flip side, could you see a version of this game where Texas just walks away from Oklahoma?
Yes, absolutely. If the offense is in a funk early on and I just think it's all important. Like to me, where that becomes a possibility for Oklahoma is if they can't get the run game going. Like you got to be able to
Yep.
get the run game going against Texas. If you're one dimensional offensively, it's going to be a long day, and you will get your lunch eaten by that Texas defense because they they are good. There is a
Yeah.
lot of talent at every level in that defense. You have to establish a consistent threat on the ground. You got to have guys blocking well up front, and you got to have a back in the game that's going to be
Mhm.
able to take advantage of the holes that are there and find space when the holes aren't there.
Jacobe Johnson, or excuse me, sorry, Javonte Barnes, Taylor Tatum, Gavin Sawchuk. We know Taylor Tatum is probably back. Well, he's back. I think that's safe to say, right? He's back. Can he be that guy that has a breakout game? Are they going to give him a chance? Does Gavin Sawchuk of 2023 show up? I think somewhere in the line, like you said, one of those two things has to happen. You can't rely. I know people love Javonte Barnes. I just don't think you can rely. I think one of those two guys have to be the guys that make the play for you because they're your game breakers. They
Yeah.
got to be the
Um,
ones that break the back and the will of the Texas defense because they got the speed to do it.
Now, yes, there is merit to what you're saying. I guess the counterpoint would be if you get a good day on the ground from Michael Hawkins,
No, well, yes,
maybe all you need is a running
yes,
back that's going to be able to rumble for 3, 4 yards every single carry because that's what OU did last year in this game with Tawi Walker.
fair, fair. But I think nobody saw Dylan Gabriel running for 100 yards. I think everybody in the world is looking at it exactly how you're looking at it, Parker, and going, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be that dude that runs 4-4 and has the ball in his hands every snap. And that may be true, actually. I probably would agree with you on that. But if it's not going to be him, you cannot rely on Javonte Barnes to be that game breaker for you. It has to be your 4-3 guys. And guess what? That's Sawchuk and that's Tatum. There's no other ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think we're all confused on the Sawchuk thing. Like, what the hell happened in the trust? And I think it has a lot to do with there's no holes half the time, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Tatum finds a hole. I
He
agree with
does.
you on that. I agree with you on that. So, but if the offensive line has cohesiveness, this it's what 3 weeks in a row that they've been healthy now and they've been practicing together. Can they finally start opening up massive holes for the run game? I think that is, like you said, that is 100%. I think that is the game for Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
That is the game. It rests solely on the offensive line
And if you
and the
look
running
at
back.
this, if you look at the history of this series in the 21st century,
The toughest team. Yep.
it is almost always the case. Not not 1000% of the time, but it is almost always the case that the team that runs the ball more effectively wins the football game.
Yep.
So that's something we'll be watching. We'll talk about it later on this week in the OU Insider Under the Visor pregame podcast. We'll cover this game from every angle before, during, and after. We'll have all of that coverage here on the YouTube channel
Yep.
as well as on OUinsider.com, where you ought to subscribe if you have not already. Otherwise, you're missing out on fantastic and exclusive content, including a feature that dropped Monday morning
Mm-hmm.
on Michael Hawkins and what
Yeah,
this
it's
means
awesome.
to him and his family. So, OUinsider.com is where you can get that and much more. Do us a favor, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribing to this channel doesn't cost you anything. It only helps us out. We'd
Yep.
appreciate it very much. We'll see you next week on the next installment of the
Shop
Post Practice Blitz.
at Shop Double Team. I wore this for Ready Mustafa. I said it right this time.
Very nice.
Um, Thank you. Go at Shop Double Team on Twitter, at shopdoubleteam.com. Get this. This is, I'm wearing it for him on this and the pregame podcast. If you like this polo, go there and get you one if you're an OU fan. Go
All
for
right,
it.
folks. Travel safe to Dallas. We'll see you soon.